The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's, not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not advertisers, and certainly not employers. They are considered thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to kick your ass. Ladies and gentlemen, time to make the grazers choke on some of that collective truth cock. It is time once again for the Sunday sermon. Got some of the usual suspects on board early. I want all the energy. Where's the fire in the room? Everybody get with me on the drum roll. Little shot of Red Desert kicking it off as always. Got Mr. Christopher Reyes. We got Wayne Sharp from the old school. Mike Aroni, Brother Ryan, Carrie, and no doubt Roman from, well, you guys know Carrie and Roman. You guys know the drill, man. OpiumTales.com, man, on board early. You guys know the drill. We got all the usual suspects. Brother Ryan is on a long road trip to take care of some interesting projects that are going to manifest, and you guys are going to get to see that as it happens, week by week, frame by frame, edition by edition, modification by modification. But I think you guys are going to dig it all the way around. Mr. Stone, this video clarity and audio clarity, courtesy of Mr. Stone, is on board. Good to see you, brother. Chase yourself, Uncle Boy. Right back at you, Chase. All right, man. Good to hear it live on the road. Wow, man. I'm broadcasting through the miracles of modern technology. Ray Topolsky, I'd love to help with the drum roll. I bet you would, man. Beating with femur bones on the skulls of our vanquished enemies, no doubt, probably. Brother Brett Bennett made it. Hey, do me a favor, guys. If you're watching on whatever format, do me a favor, sound off in the comments right now. Let me know if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Again, still working my way around StreamYard, but we're going to be moving out to some other formats. I want to get things going on BitChute, hopefully Minds, and some other formats, man, because the more platforms we are on, the harder we are to squash Zuckerberg's penchant for censorship being what it is. I am two-fisted on the liquid enthusiasm today because being back in Houston, Texas, we stopped by a little Vietnamese market with Cafe Suda. Those of you that know about Cafe Suda, you know where the enthusiasm is coming from. So I enjoy that. So I got this in our usual jug on call over here. A lot of YouTube viewers. I hope Rob makes it because we're going to give Rob a shout out as well as some other folks. It has been an interesting week, man. Good and bad, mostly good across the board, but the bad stuff had me kind of hamstrung for a little bit. But we're going to get into how I got into that and all the ways that I got out of it. First thing we're going to do is just give a warm welcome to everybody that's here. Anybody that I might have missed, I apologize. Certainly don't feel slighted, folks, if I didn't mention your name over here in the comments, because there's always about a 5 to 10 second delay, and I'm trying to juggle like 6 different things here on the screen. I only wish there was like some way that I could show you guys all the stuff that I'm doing on the production screen, because all you see is this little square in front of you and this caffeinated ranting madman coming at you with that. But I've actually got about a half dozen tabs open. One of these days, I'm just going to record this from a secondary camera so you guys can get a picture of the actual production. But Patrick Platzer just showed up on the scene, and I'm thankful for that. I'm going to get my sponsor shout outs out of the way, and then I'm going to give a special shout out to Dr. Pat. First things first, let's get this knocked out. First of all, thanking Roman and Allie and Roxy and the bevy of beautiful women over at OpiumTales.com. Because Jack Boots Dorsey has now kicked him off the Twitter format, oh, the irony, you are relegated to checking out the beautiful portraits of beautiful women on opiumtales.com. And you will also have to go over there for the highly educated, highly intellectual, testosterone-driven commentary. Roman is not only one of our flagship sponsors, he's one of my oldest and dearest friends. We actually go back to the late 80s, before a lot of you were even, you know, a remote concept of a sperm cell swimming around in your daddy's nuts. So, yeah, we go back a little bit. But I'm happy to have him on board as a sponsor of the program. Also, Casey and Dusty Tellison, the Viking brothers, the Tellison brothers over at Nordic Smoke Barbecue. Now, I'm going to give them the shout out. They are the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. You can check them out on social media at Nordic Smoke. They're on Facebook, Twitter, you name it. And Dusty does a lot of his own little videos that are little one-offs, and they're fucking hilarious. He's developing a following of his own. And Casey, as we all know, is he's a saw gunner, Marine combat vet who has a book coming out. It's going to hit officially in August. You can pre-order now, called Freaks of a Feather, coming out of Late Top Press in Spokane, Washington. So he's taking care of the hometown crowd. You guys in the hometown take care of the hometown crowd. For my Tellison brothers, I feel like I've committed a small infidelity this week, because Brother Ryan here at the Southern Command Center put on one hell of a barbecue, Wagyu beef brisket that was fucking amazing. But again, you know, we're in Texas. You expect that. You get up to the Northwest, you would not expect. When you think of places for barbecue, you think of Texas, you think of Carolina, if you dig mustard and vinegar. You think of maybe Kansas City or Memphis, but you generally don't think of the Pacific Northwest. And Casey and Dusty are proving them wrong week after week. And I want to give a very special shout out to this gentleman right here. I think we've got the overlay over the main screen right now. You guys should be able to see it. Corville Chiropractic. The number is 281-990-2225. Dr. Patrick Platzer. You can find him online. He is right off of Tomball Parkway in far north Houston. And let me tell you something about Doc Pat before we get off into the main meat of the sermon. Dr. Platzer and I, Doc Pat and I met years and years and years ago. You guys have known, I mean, my back problems, and when it screws up, it's fucking legendary. You guys know, I mean, I can be reduced to crawling. And back in the day, I was broke as a joke. I had no recompense. I had no outlet to try to get everything fixed. And I was looking around, and I found Texas Chiropractic College right up there in Pasadena. And they had a very reasonable deal going on where they let the students work on you under the direct supervision of licensed chiropractors. So you can come in and get adjusted on the cheap for people who are in dire financial straits. And that is where I met Dr. Patrick Platzer. And he tells the story a hell of a lot better than I do. In fact, he got to tell that story. To my wife this morning while he was adjusting me. But yeah, all of a sudden this big, 230-pound muscled out MMA guy, and I'm hobbling, hanging onto the wall just to be able to walk. And he came in, and I'm going to tell you a little something about it. I don't want to do the spoiler alert thing, because I really want you guys to patronize that business. You can find him online, Corville Chiropractic, and I just listed the number, and I'm going to post that picture up again here. But he was working on me this morning. Here's what happened earlier this week. This is the nature of my back situation. Now, you guys know that I had the procedures and the injections and everything else. It was a nightmare going through that. I was reduced to crawling for a long period of time, and I wasn't close enough to Dr. Platzer to get out there and get adjusted. Here's what happened this week, clean out of nowhere. I bent forward to zip up a boot, and two of those discs slid catastrophically out of place just from bending forward a little too far to zip up a side zip boot on my first day of work down here at the new job site. Very inopportune thing to have happen at the most inopportune time. And I got in touch with Dr. Pat, and he fixed me up. We had to work out a custom time for me to come in because of the schedule being what it is. But the guy's skills are amazing, and his approach is different from, because a lot of guys, they'll bounce up and down on your back, they'll turn you in weird positions, and it's like one-stop shopping. Any of you guys who have been, I'm not going to mention the chain by name because I've been barred from their premises, so I'm not even going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but some of these chain chiropractic centers and even some lesser men on the chiropractic front, they have a building full of all kinds of expensive, super high-tech equipment, and they come in and they turn you in a direction and pop, crack, snap, and they turn you in the other direction and snap, crackle, pop, thank you very much, and they take your money. Dr. Platzer is of the opinion that it's got to be a whole cohesive approach. So he does a lot of deep tissue work, really getting in and grinding into the muscles to get them to release before he starts with the spinal manipulation. And he's got great hands. He's got a great method. And, he's not afraid, on damaged cases like me, to get in there with those elbows and fucking do some work to get the soft tissue stuff done before he actually starts the adjustment. And he's got a table out there. And again, I don't want to go spoiler alert here, but again, it speaks to his unique approach. The way that it uses traction to decompress and the range of movement while under traction, you really got to experience it, man. It was something that he was doing with me very, very early on, and it's been years and years and years since I got to see him, ever since I moved up to the Northwest, and I got to see him, and he got to address all the physical issues and maladies that I was going through, and now we're all fucking straightened out. So I want you to take care of the people that take care of the Rev. So please, by all means, once again, I'm going to throw this up on the screen real quick. It's Corville Chiropractic. The number is 281-990-2225. Dr. Patrick Platzer is the man's name. Learn it, use it, patronize it, and take advantage of his services, because he's taken damn good care of me for years and years and years. So Dr. Pat, thank you, brother. Glad I got to see it. Glad I got to meet the wife. And next time we do lunch, when I get a little bit more time between then and the sermon and the old lady's not in town, and we'll just go and kick it and catch up. So please, guys, take care of all the guys that are taking care of the program and taking care of the people. Brother Sonny Puzikis just showed up. Good to see you again, my friend. And I'm glad that you popped up when you did. Emmy, I will pick up those baked goods. We'll set up a time and a place this week. Kevin Rogers, also good to see you, brother, out there doing the drone photography thing. It seems to be working out, and he's building an amazing Jeep. As soon as we get Subaru back and do some work, maybe we'll do some overlanding and some off-roading. I'm glad that brother Sonny showed up, not just because he is Sonny fucking Puzikis. You kind of have to you kind of have to punctuate that. You know what I mean? Sonny fucking Puzikis. It's kind of like the way that I differentiate between David Lee Roth era Van Halen and Sammy Hagar era Van Halen. If I'm talking about David Lee Roth era, it's Van fucking Halen. You know what I mean? If I'm talking about Bon Scott era AC/DC, it's AC fucking DC. You know, you got to put the F word in the middle as like a punctuation mark to distinguish, hey, this is something badass and you really should fucking pay attention. So Sonny fucking Puzikis is going to be, is on board today. Good to see you, brother Sonny. And Sonny, you need to check him out online too, because in August, he's got something very special coming up. And provided my back holds up and under treatment of Dr. Patrick, I should be in good shape for it. Sonny fucking Puzikis is going to be doing a class with Pat fucking Militich. That's right, up at Fort Honey Badger in Jacksonville, Texas. For those of you guys who haven't checked out Sonny online, you need to. Sonny Puzikis, Forward Training Concepts. Sonny and I have a long and interesting history dating back about a decade now. And started out as just a little tactical fanboy getting to train with his idol, and has evolved into very close friendship, which I value greatly. The man is an amazing intellect. He's an amazing instructor. And for my Texas guys, he is an amazing fucking resource to have this close to home. And at the end of August, you can look this up. on any of his social media accounts or on Sonny Pazika's Forward Training Concepts. You go to sonnypazikas.com and look it up. At the end of August, I think I want to say 21st, 22nd. I'm off on the dates. I should have pulled it up on a tab. But UFC legend Pat Miletich of Miletich Fighting Systems. He is a UFC Hall of Famer, and they are going to be teaching a class together at Fort Honey Badger. So for all of my Texas people, especially, and for any of my other people that want to make the trip, it's going to be well worth it to get out there and to see a couple of very unique warriors' minds working together to make you a little more solid individual and make you a hell of a lot harder to kill. So if you can make it out for that fucking class, do it. Again, it's Sonny fucking Puzikas and Coach Pat fucking Miletich. By the way, Coach Pat, I want to apologize that I did not get a chance to come out and see you while I was up in Iowa. By this point, you've already been informed I'm down in Texas now, working a job. And again, I don't mention the names of employers here because, you know, dox culture and Antifa maggots tend to start making phone calls and false accusations. But it's that. So we're going to avoid mentioning the employer. But I'm working at a plant here in Houston, running a crane. Thanks again to Brother Ryan. Also, thank you to Brother Ryan for the hospitality, putting me up here at the Southern Command Center. So we're gonna jump off into that. Speaking of Brother Ryan, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna do a 2-for-1 on everyone's favorite segment. We're talking about Ryan's Rabbit Hole. That's right. Yeah, a little bit of applause for the Ryan. Yes, a little bit of applause for Ryan and Ryan's Rabbit Hole. So this is something we do every week. It's become a pretty popular segment. People are asking about it. People are sending me messages. Emmy in particular sent me messages about some of the rabbit holes that we go down. You saw at the bottom of the tag that Ryan's Rabbit Hole is punctuated with Viva Referentia Obscura. Because he, like myself, is a purveyor of all things obscure and more of a purveyor of things that are esoteric among the obscure. I usually find myself pretty fucking hard-pressed to find somebody whose head is equally full of obscure and, to most grazers, useless information. He buries me. He fucking absolutely buries me. He pulls out references that leaves me going, what the fuck? One of these days I can just see it. He's going to throw something out, and me and Dennis Miller are going to be over in the corner going, dude, what the fuck? What just happened here? Anyway, we're going to do a 2-for-1 because we had originally planned as Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Your search terms are going to be Haydn's Head. What? Haydn's Head? Yes. Haydn''S head. Haydn's Head, as in Joseph Haydn, the Austrian composer. And when he died, they pulled his head out, they disinterred his bones and pulled his head out, and his head has been missing for 185 years. There are a lot of theories that go along with that, ranging from the reasonable, which is grave robbing thief that died before he could pawn off the skull, to the more obscure, which is bizarre stuff tied in with Freemasonry and who knows what the fuck all. But again, this is the rabbit hole. We just send you down. How far you want to go down that rabbit hole, that's going to be up to you. But Haydn's Head, and it's been missing for 185 years. I would like to throw in just a couple of footnotes. First of all, a side note to Haydn's Head, you should also look up Thomas Paine's bones. That's right. Another famous historical figure that had his bones disinterred, and some of them showed up in a piece of antique furniture that was sold at auction, among other things. Interesting rabbit hole to go down. But let's start with Haydn's Head, then we can move on to some of the more fun stuff with Thomas Paine's bones. And the one other thing that I wanted to get into wasn't so much of a rabbit hole, but the subject of a conversation between Brother Ryan and myself earlier this week. And if I throw out, okay, I'm going to throw this out, and I want you guys to be honest, right? I want you to just say yes or no if you've heard of it before. No Google cheats. And if you haven't heard of it, no big deal, because that was part of the conversation, was how few of my friends have actually heard about this event. And the Carrington event. event, because I don't have an actual digital echo on my thing. I'm just going to fake it. But yes, this was an event that happened in 1859, back before the power grid. And again, just chime in yes or no if you've heard of it before I brought it up, or just listen to the overview that I'm going to give you on it right here. And it's and no, not Nancy Carrington. Good job. Nice guess, Brother Dennis. And no, but the Carrington event was a coronal mass ejection event. Oh, coronal mass ejection. There's my college word. I have like 3 of those. Yeah, basically that's a glorified scientific way of saying solar flare. And the Carrington event happened in 1859. Now, of course, back in 1859, we did not have the power grid as we now know it. What we did have, on the other hand, were telegraph wires. And what happened on the day of the Carrington event in 1859, there was a massive solar flare. It is called the Carrington event because Carrington was the name of the scientist who observed the solar flare in effect. When solar flares happen, they throw out huge cosmic, hard to fathom amounts of electromagnetic energy. What happens when that interacts with the Earth's own magnetic field? It hits the ground and it runs along any conductor it can find. Depending on the power of the flare, it can create massive blackouts, as it's done even recently. But back in 1859, when this actual event happened, it ran along the telegraph wires and blew out telegraph stations all over the fucking world. It was a huge amount of chaos that was created by that. Now, think how lucky we were that all we had to worry about back then were telegraph lines. Because should such an event happen today with the modern power grid and the transformers that it would blow out, have you heard of the RAND Corporation? The RAND Corporation is a think tank that works for the United States government. The RAND Corporation games out scenarios. Hey, what would happen if? And they do this for the benefit of federal authorities and the military and the intelligence apparatus and every other thing. The RAND Corporation gamed out another Carrington event type coronal mass ejection. Their middle of the road scenario, middle of the road, not best case, not worst case. Their middle of the road scenario had 7 out of every 10 Americans dead inside of a year. But it's only a power failure. No, it's a bit bigger than that. But again, I'm going to let you go through that. I want you to Google Carrington event, and then I want you to use the following Google search term: convergence of crises. Convergence of crises. I want you to look that up, because when the power goes down, it's not just a blackout if the power's never coming on again. I want you to think about all of the things, all of the trappings of Western civilization that depend on the power grid, and imagine being taken back to the 1800s like that, because the sun had a little burp. It could have happened 9 minutes ago and we wouldn't know it. Not yet. So anyway, there's another rabbit hole for you to go down, and that's worth looking into in particular, because as you know, all of my Reverends Rangers, my Prophets of Doom, my Cinder Sisters out there, you know we get into preparedness here. You know it's a big thing that we advocate for, is to be ready for whatever may come. And the coronal mass ejection scenario, yep, yes, you're absolutely right, Ryan. The EMP, the electromagnetic pulse that would be unleashed on the planet with a similar event, is the equivalent to 500 nuclear weapons. You can also go down a rabbit hole for weaponized EMP, which is another scary little scenario, especially now that we have a president entirely compromised to the Chinese Communist Party, and the Chinese Communist Party is building more nukes. Oopsie. Yeah, it's EMP can happen from coronal mass ejection, but can also be created by weapons designed by the mind of man. And it's something worth thinking about. Say the power goes out. Well, that's fine. I'll just go gas up my car and get ready for the crisis. Only, what do pumps require to get gas out of the ground? Oh yeah, that'd be electricity. And what do those pumps feed beside your car? Oh yeah, the trucks that get groceries to market. So the trucks aren't running, no more fuel is being produced. And what else depends on? Oh yeah, the communication between law enforcement officers and the military when civil order inevitably starts to break down. What else? Water treatment plants. Oh, wow, water treatment plants. So sewage could flow into municipal drinking supplies if you live in a large city. Yes, and what happens then? People get sick. Where do people go when they get sick? They go to hospitals. Hospitals depend on what? Electricity. And when the electricity goes out, even the best and biggest and most well-funded hospitals have backup generator power for a third of their usual caseload for about 3 to 5 days at the outside. So if all of a sudden these hospitals are inundated with 10 times the amount of sick people, that fuel is going to go even quicker and they're not going to be able to help out. So what happens then? It spills into the street and people get desperate. Anyone who's ever been here in Houston, right, and been through a hurricane evacuation knows good and fucking well how crazy people get over a hell of a lot less. So this is a rabbit hole worth going down. I want you to look at Carrington event. I want you to look up the term convergence of crises, and I want you to take a serious good look at weaponized EMP as a search engine word set as well. Go down that rabbit hole. And again, not trying to take away from the obscure stuff that we were discussing earlier, but this was another conversation that Brother Ryan and I were having earlier. And again, word travels fast. For those of you who haven't already figured it out from context clues, I am here in Texas at the Southern Command Center, courtesy of Brother Ryan Adam Jenkins. He has helped me immensely in this journey in the world of cranes and crane operation, and he is providing the hospitality of putting me up here at his place of residence. By the way, if you there is some work being done to the Southern Command Center, so if you hear any noises off in the background, it's not the usual chopping up of dead hooker bodies. It's just some routine home maintenance. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. So now that we've covered the rabbit hole, and now that we're about 30 minutes into the program, I should probably get busy on the stuff that I promised to cover. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? There are a few stories that are circulating. And again, what we try to do here is take things that are only semi-related, show how they are covered by one big sweeping arc, tie it all together into a message, and then try to give you some perspective on making yourself a little bit stronger, a little bit sharper, and a little bit more ready to deal with the changing nature of the world. First of all, our good friend, our high priest of the cult of fear, Anthony Fauci, is at it again, and he's being called on it. And even mainstream sources are calling bullshit. And I'm not talking about those crazy right-wing nut jobs at One American News Network or Newsmax or even Fox. Of course, the primary mainstream outlets are running cover for him. They are trying to say that he has never lied, he has never, and that all of this is just right-wing talking points. Everything is a right-wing talking point. Here is what MSNBC had to say with regard to Dr. Fauci. They just basically ran his words without any pushback. He said that the attacks that are coming from the GOP are just painfully ridiculous, that they are coming from people who just want to put me in jail. But here's the kicker. This is the tagline to end all taglines. And when you want to talk about hubris, for those of you who don't, just go ahead and Google hubris while I keep talking, and we don't even have to break stride here. You want to talk hubris? Listen to the man's words. And I quote, and this is on MSNBC, the home of that Maddow guy that we all know and love. Attacks on me are attacks on science. Let me say that again. Attacks on me are attacks on science. This from Anthony Fauci. First off, let's just look at the absurdity of that. Let's just look at the self-importance and arrogance of that. Do we remember one of the Star Wars prequels where Palpatine steps up and he was like, we need the approval of the Senate, and he says, I am the Senate. We're not too far off here, are we? I am the science. You are a fucking mouthpiece, and a bad one. a bad one known for flip-flopping, known for political advocacy, known for, known for talking out of your ass because your mouth ought to know better. But again, he is the sainted father of the cult of fear, and therefore he cannot be questioned. Even when he says that the virus may have come from a lab, even when he says that the thought that the virus may have come from a lab is an absurd conspiracy theory, even when he maintains that, even when he's absolutely called on the fact that he knew it probably came from a lab early on and denied it. Every email that is released, and I want you to do your own digging. Again, I'm not your fucking guru. Do not take my word for anything. I want you to do your own digging. Now, keep in mind, always look through all of your sources. I want you to look at what Newsweek and MSNBC and that Maddow guy and, crybaby Stelter over at CNN and all these guys had to say about the things that went on with Dr. Fauci. I want you to listen to them. And then I want you to explore some other sources that maybe you wouldn't have ordinarily gone to, things that are outside your particular political echo chamber. If you consider yourself conservative, go listen to that Maddow guy and Crybaby Stelter. If you consider yourself liberal, put down NPR for a fucking second and look at some overseas sources. Look at sources that might label themselves conservative. You have to step out of your comfort zone to figure out what is going to be some objective truth. And every new thing that comes out, even the BBC, are you ready for this? BBC.com/news/world-Asia-China- some numbers. You can figure out how to look it out by now. Those who support the theory say it could have leaked from a WIV lab and spread to the wet market. Well, it wasn't but a year ago where people were being banned from social media for even suggesting such a thing. It's an absurd tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. An absurd tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. Like everything is before it gets declassified. But the more truth comes out, the more we get to say, hey, I fucking told you so. Of course, we're speaking to deaf ears. They're still not listening. The Grazers are committed. Know in your heart that you are right. This is more for your benefit than their benefit. Do not attempt to engage, because if they're not willing to look at this stuff objectively, there is no point in wasting your time attempting to reason with them. By this point, your list of Grazer friends should have narrowed down to just about zero. And this includes family members. I don't care what kind of loyalty you have. Once they have shown an unwillingness to engage in the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, cut them fucking loose and walk on. It's like a bag of bricks. Remember Pacino from Devil's Advocate? It's like a bag of bricks. All you got to do is set it down. Who are you carrying those bricks for anyway? God? It's a great rant. Look it up. Anyway, the Google search terms. So why has it come up again, asks the BBC, because reports swirling around in the U.S. media have raised fresh concerns over the lab leak theory. No, what that's a nice way of saying is emails have revealed that we knew there was a strong potential that it could have come from a lab. Emails have revealed and studies have revealed that the wet market that it supposedly came from was 1,000 miles away from the from where the bats are, that it supposedly got passed on to a pangolin that got passed on in a soup to some unfortunate diner, which was patient zero for the pandemic. None of the official account makes sense. So pretty much like anything else, 9/11, Oklahoma City, this kind of thing. Us tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists are used to that. Now, look, some conspiracy stuff is just nut jobbery. And I'm going to call out some of you QAnon motherfuckers. I'm going to call some of you out right now. Again, dude, I dig what you got going on because it's highly entertaining. You're mostly full of shit. Sorry. It's like at the start of the pandemic when you guys were trying to pass this off on, no, it wasn't a virus. It was actually the 5G cell phone towers. Get fucking bent. You guys may come back later and remind me that I pointed this out live and online, and I'll be more than willing to stand corrected. But for right now, you guys are nut jobs and you're completely full of shit. Okay, so I have to, in the interest of my own integrity, I have to call y'all out too. But when I say conspiracy, I'm keeping it right in the middle here. On the one side, we have this level of nut jobbery. On the other side, we have David Icke with the royal family of shape-shifting reptilian aliens, vampires, what the fuck ever. What was it that Alex Jones said about David Icke? He is a turd in a punch bowl. Wow, when Alex Jones is calling you a fucking conspiracy nut job, yeah, you're probably out there. Anyway, again, why has it come up again? Because it's no longer even remotely considered a conspiracy theory by anybody with two brain cells left to rub together. Look at the evidence. The media will continue to run interference for Joseph Biden. The media will continue to run interference for Dr. Fauci and his cult of fear. Why? Because it is about control. And again, when we change the perception, when what you are looking at, I'm showing you something, and then I'm describing it to you and putting that veil of noise over the actual signal. I'm describing it to you through this fog. I'm describing it to you, and I'm telling you that it's anything but what it absolutely is. And it creates some cognitive dissonance in your brain because you know what you're looking at. But the authority figures that you've always been told to trust are telling you that it's something different. And maybe, oh my God, nobody wants to be a nut job. Nobody wants to be thought of as nonconformist or insane, but you can't be afraid of the truth. And again, this is part number one of the arc that we're trying to establish here. You've heard me say it before, and I stick to it. We are stimulus response creatures, and perception is 9/10 of reality. If you control the stimulus, by default, you control the response. And because perception is 9/10 of reality, when you have absolute total control of the perception, you have total control of their reality as it stands in their own head and in the eyes of others. There are those of us who are still capable of critical thinking. We are few and far between, but we persist. We persist in spite of the media onslaught. Here's where it gets even better. What else just came out? Well, I mean, listen, we could go back a couple of years to the Epstein thing, that guy that didn't kill himself. I don't even need to get into that, because even for the people who were the most anti-conspiracy types in the world, that wasn't a red pill. That was a red suppository. That one got shoved right up every grazer's ass. You had to look it in the face. A guy in the middle of a child sex abuse scandal that involved world leaders, and he gets put into prison, and everybody's laughing and joking. Yeah, it's going to be funny when he kills himself. What? He fucking killed himself? No, he really didn't. And we all know it, but I go through Epstein to get to the Clintons. I think Bill Gates has probably said that exact sentence at one point or another. I go through Epstein to get to the Clintons, or the Clintons. I go through Gates to get to Epstein. Look, man, it's all fucking nasty. But here's another addition to the Clinton body count. Again, I don't subscribe to. You guys might have seen my post this week if you follow my personal page. I lost a good friend 2 years ago. We all lost a good friend a couple of years ago this week, a fellow by the name of Chris Reed. Captain America by any stretch of the fucking imagination. Chris Reed was the best of us. May he rest in peace, and I wish solace to his family. I had already distanced myself from the more radical end of the conspiracy crowd by this point. What completed my break from the hardcore conspiracy crowd was Chris Reed's name showing up on a Clinton body count list. Enough, you opportunistic fucks. It was a terrible tragedy, and a very good man died in a terrible accident. Not everything has Hillary's fucking fingerprints on it. And at that point, I broke away. So not everything is part of that, but at some point things do become overwhelming. And it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. We can't prove anything with regard to Hillary. We can't prove it. Right? We can't call her a convicted felon. We can't call her. I mean, we could call her a felon, but we can't call her. We can't call her a felon with any authority, right? Because she's never been convicted. In the same sense that people can talk about the Orange Man's Russian collusion, but until you come up with some proof, you've got bupkis. Yeah, but with all that smoke, man, there's got to be a fire somewhere. Okay, call me when you find the fucking fire. But here's a little more smoke. A journalist, again, we're talking about media controlling perception versus reality, and how much perception is a part of reality, and how much all of that is being controlled by the media. Clinton whistleblower, and I'm not even going to give you the source here, Clinton whistleblower who broke Clinton Lynch tarmac story found dead in apparent suicide. Christopher Sign is the man's name. He is a 45-year-old news anchor for a Birmingham, Alabama for a Birmingham, Alabama news outlet. Police found his body. Here's the kicker right off the bat. When I do a Google search for this, the headlines that keep coming up, first of all, most of them don't even discuss the fact that it's being considered a suicide. None of these outlets discuss that. Like, for instance, NBC's Today Show, Christopher Sign, Alabama news anchor, dies at 45. Their headline doesn't even mention the connection to the Clinton Tarmac story. Deadline online, Christopher Sign dies, Alabama TV anchor who broke Bill Clinton Tarmac visit with Loretta Lynch story found dead. Again, nothing about it being a suicide. From The Independent, coming out of the UK, TV reporter who broke story of Bill Clinton Tarmac meeting with Loretta Lynch dies of apparent suicide. Finally, we get a story to mention it. Even out of the stories that do mention that his death was ruled a suicide, nobody yet has discussed the method. When Robin Williams tragically hung himself several years ago, we knew immediately that the death had been ruled a suicide, and we knew that he had hung himself. That news hit the press and they took it and ran with it. We knew immediately. With most high-profile deaths, whether it's celebrities, journalists, politicians, whatever, if there is something around it, we know the method of death. They died of heat stroke, or in this case, an alleged suicide. Really? How? And like with so many of the ones that are connected to the Clintons, the one guy that shot himself twice in the head with his left hand, even though he was right-handed, this kind of stuff. They're not even mentioning the apparent method. But most of the stories are just dealing with the tragedy of the death of a journalist. Interesting. Clinton whistleblower who broke Clinton Lynch Tarmac. And you guys know the story. Loretta Lynch, who was the attorney general at the time under the Obama administration, she left her private plane and got onto Bill Clinton's private plane, and they had a chat on a tarmac at an airport. Because people do that. They just get off their own planes and walk over to their buddy's plane and sit down and discuss the weather and their grandchildren. That was the official story. It later came out that was anything but the truth. Loretta Lynch refused to recuse herself in the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. Put her emails, fuck off. I'm not even going to deal with those people. Our deepest sympathy is shared with Christopher's loving family and close friends. We have lost a revered colleague whose indelible imprint will serve forever as a hallmark of decency. God. ABC said in his statement. This is from the foreword to his book. The plan was perfect. No cameras, no microphones, no prying eyes, and plenty of security. The setting for a clandestine meeting could not have been better. Former President Bill Clinton exited Attorney General Loretta Lynch's private plane 20 minutes after he boarded. Both thought they got away with it. Both were wrong. Amid a heated presidential race, federal investigations involving emails in Benghazi, and society looking for clarity on the future of the country. Remember, it was Hillary running against the Orange Man. The secret tarmac meeting would only complicate things. The secret meeting would have never been revealed if it weren't for a veteran journalist and a trusted source, his book synopsis says. Now, you guys can dig on down that rabbit hole. The only reason I'm bringing this up is, again, this is part 2 of the arc. Just like things that were once considered tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, as you've heard me say before, it's always that way until it's declassified. The truth is coming out. The truth is unstoppable, and fundamentally, people are suckers for that truth. It is the same with the Wuhan lab. With the Wuhan lab escape theory, you can only run cover for so long. But big tech is making it possible to stretch that out and stretch that out and stretch that out. Why? Because they are not only, first of all, we've got legacy media, and we already know that legacy media is a bought and paid for propaganda arm for the state. The deep state, Bart, are you talking that crazy tinfoil hat deep state conspiracy? Okay, we're going to get off on that one day, but let me just give you a brief synopsis for you people that think that deep state is a myth. Keep in mind, when Eisenhower gave his exit speech, he warned us
He warned us of what? The military-industrial complex, right? We all know about that speech. Eisenhower warned us that the existence of a huge military manufacturing base has never existed before in the American experience. He warned against, and I quote, the acquisition of power, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. We've all heard it, right? We've all read it. We've all heard snippets of the speech. We haven't looked up the video for the whole thing. Here's the one thing that very few people know. In the original draft of that speech, it wasn't the military-industrial complex. It was the military-industrial congressional complex. That's a fact. You can Google it. Actually, you can DuckDuckGo it. If you Google it, it'll probably get buried in the algorithm. Whatever. Somebody still explain algorithms to me. Here's the point. If there is a deep state, how would you better qualify it? How would you better qualify that but deep state? Military, industrial, congressional. What better describes the concept of a deep state? This is something we might devote a whole week to, say next weekend, provided nothing else really mind-blowing happens between now and then. But if you can deny the existence of the quote unquote deep state, and you can call that a quote unquote tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but if you deny that money protects money and power protects power and that those demographics often overlap, you're a fucking moron. A grazer moron, and you and I have nothing further to discuss. I digress. We know that legacy media is a propaganda arm for the power structure, for money and power, the power structure for the Congress, for the military, for industry, for the military industrial congressional complex, because we can't use the words deep state without being thought of as fucking conspiracy theorists. You know what? If you've got conspiracy theorist friends, you either became much closer to them over the course of the past year, or you owe a fuck of a lot of them an apology, including Alex Jones. Ryan, I want to be sure to point that out. Because Ryan and I texted early on when the Fauci emails were breaking back and forth. Alex Jones is right. Alex Jones was right. I think a lot of people owe Alex an apology, but again, I digress. When the propaganda wing of the power structure is telling you something, you would better be looking at it through a very precise lens. You would better be looking at it through a lens of, what are they trying to sell me? What is the narrative they are trying to carry across to me? Here's an interesting little flip of the script. With all of the stuff that has come out between last year and today about UFOs, all the stuff that's being declassified for years, those of us who are true believers, X-Files lunatics, what the fuck ever, guys who, some of us who since our childhood may or may not have been obsessed with the stuff that our government is hiding about UFOs. Some of us who were lucky enough to have a grandmother that gave them a book called Socorro Saucer in a Pentagon Pantry, influencing my young mind about how the military industrial complex might be hiding things away with regard to UFOs. Some of us haven't been that lucky. Some of us are very late to the game. But now that the government is coming out and saying it, once again, this is an interesting flip of the script. We've been saying for years that UFOs exist and the government is hiding it. And we were like, and we were, of course, lambasted and excoriated. These crazy conspiracy theorists and their rectal probes and their UFOs, their lights in the sky, wah, wah, wah. And then the government comes out and admits it. Well, all of a sudden, the grazers owe us an apology. But here's an interesting flip of the script. As Caitlin Johnstone pointed out, I don't know if you follow Caitlin. I run hot and cold on Caitlin, so I'm not going to outright recommend her. But, I pop over to her Twitter feed every now and then and take a look at what she's posting. And she made an interesting observation that now that the government said military, industrial, congressional complex has come out and admitted presence of UFOs and that the government's been hiding these things for a long fucking time, suddenly us old school UFO guys fucking skeptical. Why? Well, it's because you automatically reject anything that the government says. You're not, I know that sounds a little hyperbolic, but you're not very far from the truth. This is the thing with regard to the previous statement. Yes, we're skeptical. We're skeptical of anything that comes in through the filters, the eyes, the ears, the nose, all of our sensory perceptions. We are skeptical because we are attempting to ascertain what objective truth is. We are thinking critically of everything that comes our way, or at least we should be, right? Sometimes it's party over politics. Sometimes it's party over principle, party over politics, or party over policy. Sometimes it's like that, even for the best of us. But we try to maintain critical thought. When it comes through that critical lens, we think to yourself, cui bono? Who benefits? What would you be trying to sell me? What would you be trying to hide? And what would you be benefiting from? Again, when the propaganda apparatus was trying to sell us that anybody who thought UFOs were a real thing was kind of nutty, when the party in control tries to sell us that the thought of the obvious Occam's razor solution that the COVID-19 virus escaped from a Wuhan lab, along with all the other things that come with that, that's a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. They keep trying to convince us. Immediately, we find that suspect because we know that they have a lot to gain from lying to us and controlling our perceptions, right? Again, control the perception, you control the reality. Control the stimulus, control the response. It's that way with COVID. It's that way with the lab leak theory. And now with the UFO evidence being, suddenly out of the benevolence and kindness of their, little federal hearts, they're turning this evidence loose. Obviously, for those of us who have been screaming about it for decades, the fact that they just turn on a dime and go, they exist, and we've known about it for a long time. All right, what's behind the curtain? What's behind the curtain? What are you trying to fucking sell me? What narrative are you about to come down the pike with? Dennis, I think that's a phenomenal observation. Sun Tzu from The Art of War. Never accept what your enemy offers you, right? That is, that's a point worth pondering. And in the interest of critical thought, in the interest of digging through the ocean of bullshit to find the occasional sandbar of truth, yes, we're going to be a little bit skeptical. But you always have to be aware, because guess what? Even people who you might consider allies, they're still trying to sell you something. I want you to remember these 4 words and sound off properly in all caps. Everyone has an agenda, myself included. My agenda's as benevolent as it gets coming from me. I want to make you sharper thinkers. I want to make you more prepared. I want to make you harder to kill. But everyone has an agenda. Everyone. Our side, their side. But when the agenda comes down the pike, the way that it does, again, who benefits? The power structure, the military, industrial, congressional complex, the deep state, for lack of a better word. You got to pay close attention. Again, the quote whose origins I can never remember, and I always attribute it to Dmitry Orlov. The advantage that we had in the Soviet Union was that we knew that anything we got from the press was propaganda. We knew that it was lies to benefit the establishment and the power structure. The disadvantage that free societies have is that they believe the information they are being given is objective and not propaganda. They couldn't be more wrong. I want to close with this example. I had the good fortune this weekend. I had the good fortune of being surrounded by, first of all, being back in Houston, being surrounded by friends. There was, Ryan put on a huge barbecue on the back porch, and some friends came over, some of whom I already knew, some of whom I just met. I met a young man. I'm not gonna front him out completely until he gives me permission, but we will call him Rob. Rob and I had a long conversation. See, Rob was a child in the 1980s. And Rob, as a child, grew up in El Salvador. Now, what do we know about El Salvador? Well, we know that there were a whole lot of covert operations. We know that it was, kind of it was a big chunk of the Iran Contra scandal. We know that Reagan was arming the Contras in Nicaragua, and we were also backing the right-wing military junta in El Salvador. And he told me these stories. He told me these stories from his childhood, that, things that he could remember of, when you knew that things were about to kick off, when you knew that the shooting was about to start and you better get to the room in your house that's got the fewest windows. He relayed all of these stories from a personal perspective, and he talked about the actions of the death squads. He talked about, like all the Jesuits that got drug out and executed, the murders of the Catholic priests and the nuns down there by these right-wing death squads. And the only perspective that I had to offer, I was like, I was reveling in that, to get the lived experience of someone who was there at a particular point in history. It was very, very dark and very, very chaotic. And to hear that story through the eyes of a child who lived through that. And the only perspective I had, because he asked me, he said, I always wondered, is like, what were they telling y'all about what was going on? Well, I'm old enough to remember the Reagan era. I'm old enough to remember the obvious bias in mainstream media, even as far back as that. Nothing like what we have today by any stretch of the imagination, but still pretty obvious. And we heard a lot about what Reagan did. We heard a lot about what American tax dollars were supporting. Now, the official policy was we were trying to stop communism in our own hemisphere. We were trying to stop communism literally from expanding into our own fucking backyard. That was the policy. That was the goal. The means to achieving that goal got more than a little fucking sideways, and some really horrible shit happened, and a lot of people died. But again, this is what we're being shown. And remember that wall of noise and that fog that's obstructing the signal, because, Rob didn't pull any punches about the really shitty, horrific things that the government did, right? That the literal right-wing military junta that we backed in El Salvador in the 1980s. They did some really horrible shit, and Rob didn't pull any punches about that. But Rob had both the ideological consistency, the intellectual honesty, and the integrity to point out all of the things that the leftist death squads did, including one particular happy little incident where they went out onto a soccer field. There were these old plastic mines. Soviets produced them. They're all over Afghanistan. They've maimed and killed kids for fucking decades now over in that little sandbox. But they've distributed those mines all over the world. They're very small. They can be hidden, small, plastic, really dangerous up close. They tend to remove limbs. The leftist death squads, the communists who we were trying to keep out of our own backyard, they went onto soccer fields and they put these mines down on these soccer fields. Now, granted, the military used these soccer fields for drills. So that's a legitimate military target, right? Yeah, but they didn't just put these mines in the ground. They hid them inside soccer balls and children's toys. How much of that did you actually get to hear about? All of my fellow old folks that remember the Reagan era and all the things that went down in Central America, how much of that did we get to hear? Not fucking much. The danger is we are always looking for good guys and bad guys. That is a uniquely American thing for the most part. We need to know who's wearing the white hat, who's wearing the black hat. We need to know who's the badge wearing sheriff and who's that cattle rustling lowlife that just walked into town. We need to know who is Dirty Harry and who is Mustafa. That's something that we need to get past. First of all, lesson number one, don't look for good guys and bad guys. Look for the motivation and look at which of those truths speaks to you, because you are going to have to do some horrible shit to achieve necessary ends many, many times. And of course, that's going to be viewed through an ideological lens. But the more important lesson here is to understand that no matter which source, again, we didn't hear about the actions of those leftist death squads down there. I didn't hear about it from ABC, CBS, or NBC, the three major networks that we had when I was that age. I had to go to other magazines for that. Jane's Defense Weekly, Soldier of Fortune, publications that were outside the mainstream, but the only publications that had the balls to publish such things. So again, if you are staying within your echo chamber, if you are staying within your comfort zone, you are isolating yourself from very important facts that may very well just affect your worldview. I want to give my brother Andrew Rivers a shout out. He listened to it was a Rubin Report podcast, but he listened to a Sam Harris podcast back when the George Floyd thing was going on. And thankfully, he had critical thinking skills and intellectual honesty, and it changed his worldview. Never be afraid to change your opinion, your view, based on new information. That is the way we grow and evolve. But in processing that new information, understand the source and recognize those four words. When you are processing that new information, when it's entering into your brain through your ear filters and your eye filters and your touch and taste filters, when you're processing that new information, just remember that they're trying to control your perception, or at least nudge it. They're trying to control your perception. If they're trying to control your perception, they are trying to affect your reality. So step out of your comfort zone and look at those other sources. But remember, no matter which side of the fence you're on, and no matter how deeply you're dug in on that side of the fence, everyone has an agenda. The sole guiding principle is your agenda should not be controlled by theirs. When it starts to cross that threshold, time to withdraw back into yourself, lock it down. Never be afraid to admit when you were wrong and adapt and evolve. But never be guided by the fear that you might be wrong just because the loudest voices in the room are pointing at you like Sutherland at the end of Body Snatchers and accusing you of being the nut job. Because in these times, the nut jobbery bar has been set so high that better than half the time, us nut jobs are the only ones that have an honest perspective on what the fuck is going on in the world. Never lose sight of that. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Appreciate you guys being here. I'm only I'm only 4 minutes over this week, so we managed to bring it close to the deadline. So that was good. I appreciate every guy and gal who show up consistently every week and listen to the Fat Old Cripple rant. I appreciate Patrick Platzer being here and for the adjustment and the deep tissue, soft tissue work that you did to get everything situated. And I'm looking more forward to the work week because it's going to be a hell of a lot easier thanks to those efforts. I thank the sponsors of the program, and I thank each and every one of y'all. I'm going to pass around that digital collection plate like we do every week. If anything that I've said has helped you out in any way, shape, or form, or changed your worldview, or given you some information that you might not have known before, and you want to throw me a little coin, it is a labor of love, but I'm always open to accepting gifts. Pass around the collection plate. I'm on Cash App. I'm on Venmo. I'm on PayPal. I'm on probably Zelle. I'm pretty sure. What else? Facebook Pay, every other damn thing. If you want to throw me some coin and help out the project, that would be great. If you can't, dude, I totally get it. But here's what you can do for me. If you want to help out, you don't have any coin to throw. First of all, we're going to go out with a little clutch. Our outro music, Fortunate Son, because I ain't no fortunate son. If you don't have any coin to throw, or you're not in a position to, not a big deal, but you can still help me out. You can spread the word about the program. You can point them to any of my social media presence, whether it's a Reverend Bart fan page. You can see the bar down here at the bottom, right down at the bottom there. They got my YouTube channel. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook for as long as they let me stay there, and of course the YouTube channel. Turn them on to the program, man. Let them know, hey, there's a like-minded, kindred spirit, fat-ass old cripple that rants and raves for an hour every week. You guys may want to check them out, so it will help boost the program. But the best thing that you can do, you already know where it's going, guys. You can say it with me, man. The 3 prime directives. The best thing that you could do to honor the efforts that I'm putting in, right? Number 1, be the signal in a world full of noise. Be the light in a world full of darkness, and always strive to be the strength in a world full of weakness. Strength means a lot of things, man. Not just here, but here and here. It's all that sharpness. It's going to make you a better thinker. It's going to make you a better person. And it's going to make you less and less vulnerable to the one thing that everyone, all those other agendas we were talking about, are always trying to choke you with. And that is fear. When they try to choke you with fear, you choke them with the truth cock. Know what you're waving with that truth cock, and don't be afraid to choke them with it. Until next week, you guys. Appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much. I love you all. Always appreciate the support. I'm the Reverend. That is the gospel. See you all next Sunday. Thanks for being here. Peace.